You are watching Divorce Shield Live, the weekly show just for men that are thinking about or going through a divorce. Ready to learn how to find happiness again after divorce? You're in the right place. Welcome back to the show. My name is John Knocklinger. I am a recovering divorce attorney and the founder and head coach of Divorce Shield, the only company exclusively devoted to training men how to plan and prepare for divorce. You can find out more about us at thedivorceshield.com. Today, my guest is Allyson Fusella. She is a board-certified, professionally trained life coach and the founder of Foundations Wellness Coaching. She holds certifications in EFT, heart math, and neuro-linguistic programming. I think we may learn a little bit about those today during today's conversation. She's a published author and has a book coming soon called Heart Wide Open. She's even been a guest on Dr. Oz. She uses the lessons that she learned from her own challenges, like getting divorced after 35 years, to help others develop a healthy sense of self so that they can change their lives and find happiness. Most importantly, she's a mom to 3 incredible, good-looking, and successful kids. You can learn more about Allyson at foundationscoach.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Allyson.
Thanks, John. I'm so happy to be here.
Yay! Well, it's our pleasure for you to be here, that's for sure. So I have so many questions for you today about finding happiness, which is something that my clients really struggle with when they get through a divorce. That whole sense of I'm never going to find anyone again. I'm never going to be happy.
Yeah.
So I just want to dive right in with sort of a basic question. You're a life coach. So what is a life coach?
Okay, so a life coach is, first of all, I want to say about happiness. Happiness is an inside job. So a life coach guides you to unlock your potential. It guides you to I help guide people to their inner worthiness. I lead my clients back to their true self and their power. And I think that's important for everybody. I know not just in a divorce situation, but a lot of people have worthiness issues and, I'm not enough for very various reasons. And I think that the most important thing that I can do as a life coach is to show people, what their potential is, what their power is, help guide them back to themselves so that they can access their own inner wisdom and guidance, because everybody has so much power. And I think that a lot of times people just forget how powerful they are and what they actually can, how they can shine their light and bring their unique self into the world. So really what we do is we kind of redefine what's not working in your life, what you want to change, set and clarify your specific goals. And most importantly, I really work hard to identify and unblock the negative thought and belief patterns that are holding you back. Because a lot of times we tend to believe something that's not true about us, or we have a thought pattern that's just, we learned it in our childhood or we developed it in our adult relationships, and it just doesn't serve us anymore and it's not true of us anymore. And a lot of times we repeat, I'm sure you see this all the time, you just keep repeating patterns. So we kind of identify what's holding me back. What do I feel about myself? Like I said, happiness is an inside job. So you have to be happy with yourself. You have to be really secure in what you bring, who you are, because a lot of times in marriages, we lose ourselves. We lose who we are, trying to figure out how to make it work. And I think that's when you feel unhappy, but the unhappiness isn't because you're we're not ruled by our circumstances. We're ruled, we have a lot of control about how we feel. Our circumstances do not have to rule our internal state, which is heart math, which is what we're going to talk about later. But so a lot of times, like, you just have to really realize, who you are and what your worthiness is and where your happiness is and what your needs are and what your wants are, and that you're important, and figure out a way to compromise that. So that's really basically what it is. I guide people back to themselves to unlock their full potential.
So how do you actually go about helping people? I mean, is this like, Is this like therapy, or like how exactly do you do it? Do you meet with people? Is it more through giving them stuff to read? Just give me a little bit about your process.
Yeah, I mean, it's not therapy. It's really an accountability partner. It's someone that can help you see things that you can't see. Like I'm really good. I sit and I listen, and I'm really good at intuitively understanding what they're saying underneath what they're saying. And so, like I said, it's really about what do you believe? Because therapy dives into your childhood, and they diagnose you and analyze your past. I'm just like, it doesn't matter at this point. All that matters is what messages did you internalize? What do you believe about yourself? It doesn't matter where it comes from anyway at this point in time. It's what do I believe about myself, and how is that affecting my life? Using myself as an example. I was, my father left when I was a baby. And so my father died without having even acknowledged that I lived.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize that gave me an underlying message of unworthiness and unimportant. And so I spent my whole life, well, the first part of my life, perfectionism, which is the greatest form of self-abuse, earning love, working hard to achieve, not for my own sense of achievement, just to earn my place to be on this planet. And it was disempowering. It wasn't empowering. So a lot of times people have these issues that they, a lot of times with men, they struggle. I know a lot of my male clients, they struggle with imposter syndrome. Men don't have, the reason that I really wanted to start working with men is that I feel like men don't have a safe place to express their emotions, to express their feelings, even to explore their feelings. So that's really what it is. It's like I help them explore what they're actually feeling, because if you cannot shove it, you can't, it's going to come up somewhere. It's usually going to come up as anger. It's going to come up as physical issues, or it's going to come up as relational issues. You cannot shove your pain. So my practice really, I focus a lot on the pain. What are you feeling? What's hurting you? And how can we shift it? How can we change your perspective? Because it doesn't have to be about, why did this happen to me? This can be about, what can I learn from this? And when you make that shift, that changes your whole perspective. What can I learn from this? What does it teach me about me? Even if you're in a relationship that's abusive, right? It's never going to feel good. I'm not saying that that's okay. I'm saying, what is it teaching you about you? Find your worth, find your power. You can step away from that. You can step away from that and not let it destroy you. That's part of owning who you are. And then there's relationships that are two very good people that are just not meant to be together, which was the case in my marriage. We couldn't find a common ground, but there was no right or wrong. But because of my background, I spent a lot of years feeling like I was wrong because we didn't agree on fundamental, like we had different needs, we had different priorities. And because of my unworthiness issues, it wasn't that we had differences. It was that I was wrong and I had to shift and I had to change. And until I did my own work, I wasn't able to move through that.
Yeah, I want to get to your I want to get more into your marriage in a minute. You just indicated that a lot of the issues that people have stem from their childhood. Do people recognize that even when you tell them, or is that something that's really difficult for people to understand and identify, that really these unworthiness issues come from what happened to them when they were kids?
That is something that is very difficult for people to recognize and accept. Very difficult, because I felt this way too. It's like, well, I'm a grown adult with 3 children. I don't have the right to feel this way. It's so old. Why am I not over this? Or a lot of times, and I see this a lot with men, they feel like they're blaming. They feel like they're tough. They should be past this. I don't want to blame. I'm not going to blame it. And I'm like, this has nothing to do with blame. Nothing. This has to do with appreciation. This has to do with compassion. This has to do with love. I mean, I was able to fully, when I did my work, I was able to fully appreciate who my parents were because they taught me exactly what not to do. They taught me exactly who not to be. They taught me who I was. I had to find out who I was by myself. And that was a hard road, but nobody could take that from me now. And because of that, because I know what it feels like not to be loved, because I know what it feels like to be abandoned, because I know what it feels like to be discarded, I don't let anybody that crosses my path feel that way. Anybody. I love my kids in a bigger, higher, better way. I'm a better mother because of it. I'm a better human because of it. I was a better wife because of it. My marriage didn't work out, and we'll talk about that, but that's for other reasons. But ultimately, my marriage was part of my growth and learning process. It was a beautiful thing. So you can be grateful there is lessons in the pain. We don't have to judge pain. A lot of times we're like, I think there's a lot of pressure these days to be happy and be positive and don't be in pain, and you judge it as wrong or negative or bad. It's not. Your pain is there if you're not uncomfortable, you're not going to move. You're not going to do anything. And that happens a lot of times too. I see that a lot with men. They get just comfortable and they don't want to make waves, and they stop caring about their own happiness and they withdraw. And it's a problem, because then that feeds the wife's, insecurity. Women are emotional. They want connection. The man doesn't know what to do. He withdraws, and it causes problems. But yeah, it's really hard for a lot of people. So I start off with there is no blame here. There's no blame here. This is about recognizing the messages that you internalized. That's it. So when I shifted, using my father as an example, when I shifted from I was abandoned and worthless to God was protecting me from a really bad human. And if he was in my life, I wouldn't be the woman that I am today. I couldn't. So thank you. He got me on this planet, and then God removed him to protect me. That's a whole different perspective shift. It's the same circumstances, exactly the same circumstances. But for me, that was empowering because I was important and I was protected. I'm here to do work, and I'm here to use every single thing that I learned. I didn't have a good relationship with my mother, and I used that to be a better mother. So you can take anything that you go through in life, and you can use it and make yourself better, and use it to the highest, fullest potential. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and that's something that a lot of men have trouble with. Yeah. I'd say even more so than a lot of women. And when we're talking about marriages ending, I think a lot of times, instead of recognizing, sort of that there are lessons to be learned by the end of the marriage, a lot of people get caught up in blame. Why? It's the other person's fault. The other person did this. The other person did that. So I think everything you just said is just so wonderful. And it's something that a lot of men need to hear, that, take this thing that just happened, this thing that's horrible, that's, that, you're going to be very upset about, and learn so that, your next relationship is better. Your relationship with your kids are better. So let's talk about your marriage. So you were divorced after about 35 years. Is that right?
I was married 30 years. We were together, almost 5 before.
Oh, okay. So long time. So I think our viewers might be interested, because I think in terms of how your marriage ended and how you came to that decision, because that's a very hard thing for most people to do, is to decide it's time. This marriage isn't working for me anymore. How did you come to that decision?
It's a very difficult decision. And like I said, I had to do my own work, because for a lot of years I did the blame game. I was unhappy. I was miserable. I felt like I was giving everything I had. And I was lonely, and I was raising 3 children. My middle son was very ill, so I was exhausted, and my daughter had sleep apnea, so she didn't sleep. She had her sphincter muscle didn't close, so every time she ate, drank, cried, or laid down, she projectile vomited for 20 minutes.
Oh my God.
And the doctor told me that she was going to outgrow it in a year. It took 3. And then when she fell asleep at night, her tonsils settled into her throat, and she stopped breathing 8 times an hour. So my little tiny gorgeous baby girl would go from snoring like a freight train to dead silent, and it would jolt both of us awake.
Oh my
And
God.
I was exhausted. So I was living on coffee and cat naps and taking care of my kids, and I felt alone. And I would say to my husband, I'm alone. And he'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm in the same room. I'm right here. So we had different needs, and I blamed, and I felt again, my pain of abandonment said that I felt abandoned. I felt lost. I felt alone. So, but the beautiful thing is my husband was part of my healing journey. If my husband if my husband wasn't my husband, I wouldn't have been forced to go find who I am.
Yeah.
And so I did my own work. I decided, like, I worked really hard to bridge the gap between us, and I couldn't do it. So I tried it his way, and I disconnected completely, which almost killed me, because that's not who I am. So I changed who I was to stay. And that's a bad thing. But people do that all the time. I'm like, okay, well, I can't, he's not going to meet me where I'm at. I'm going to disconnect and just disappear. And when I disappeared, he thought we were getting along better. He was happy. It was good. There was no need to communicate anymore. There was no me, hey, I need you. There was none of that, which I just disappeared. And in that time, my husband was, I look at it now, gracious enough. I didn't look at it that way then, but gracious enough to let me do my work. And I dug into what was hurting me. And I realized that, you know what? I'm not wrong for what I need. I spent so long thinking I'm wrong to need this. So I decided not to need it. And that almost killed me. And, heart disease, #1 killer of men. And because they shove stuff. And I didn't, I tried that shoving and disconnecting from myself. It didn't work for me. So I really dug hard into who I am. And I decided that I have a right to need what I need. I do. And so does he. I have a right to be who I am. And so does he. And I was determined to appreciate him for who he was, so that I could leave that marriage in a place of love. That was my decision, because I wanted to do that for my children. I wanted to be that woman that I claim that I want to be, the bigger, higher, better woman. That's who I needed to be, that in order to walk away from my marriage, because it was devastating. Nobody wants to get divorced.
No.
It's devastating. It's a failure. And so, I did my work, and I blamed him for a lot of years. I was like, it's his fault. He doesn't care. And you know what? It's not true. It wasn't that he didn't care. It wasn't. He didn't know how. He doesn't need what I need. He doesn't need that deep emotional connection. That's it. It's not that he didn't care. So when I could get there and I could love myself in that place and be like, you get to have this. You don't have to stay where you don't. Really, there's no working it out. There was no working out. We did counseling. We gave it everything we had. We really did, both of us. And we gave each other all we had to give. But then I decided that the best and highest and most loving thing I could do was to leave this marriage, because I deserve to be happy. And I decided, I have a daughter. I have 2 sons and a daughter. And my awakening was, would I want this marriage for my daughter? And the answer was absolutely not. And would I, so that's, and I also tried really hard I had this conversation with one of my kids this morning about raising my children to understand, to love and appreciate that man. He is your dad. He loves you to death. But but you need, in order to you need to be you, and you need to be able to connect with people. And I tried to raise them with the heart to love and connect and do the best I could to, make them understand, because he has his own demons that he was unwilling to look at. And that's the thing. You have to be willing to look at what you bring in. Everybody brings something in. Everybody brings pains or preconceived notions about yourself, or just stuff they don't want to look at into your marriage. A lot of times men tend to be drawn, not men, I'm going to say all of us, we're drawn to what love looks like, what we are familiar with. And sometimes that has nothing to do with love. What I knew love to be was not what I want to define love as. It's not what I believe love is. It's disconnection and abandonment and begging for it. Like you have to beg for it. You don't get it for free. That's not love. It's not. That's what I got from my parents. So that's what I knew love to be. So that was the kind of relationships that I gravitated to, only because I didn't know any better. So that's why I think it's so important to work with a coach to understand that, you are so important. You have everybody's phenomenal. My ex-husband he's a phenomenal human. I'm a phenomenal human. We do not belong together. We cannot have a phenomenal marriage. Two good people do not necessarily, and we were 20 years old.
Well, how far into the marriage were you when you started to recognize this? When did you have your self-awakening that this is what was that that you guys just weren't in the same place?
I knew it early, but I didn't know. I didn't know that I had no right to expect something. I was so, it's okay. We'll get married. We'll grow closer. We'll get that connection. He didn't need what I needed. So I always knew that I always knew that there was something missing. And we talked about it before we got married, but I just thought, well, I'll figure it out. I could have shifted me. Like it wasn't something, there was always some kind of disconnect. But we were in love, we were young, and we'll figure it out. And I think that it was fine in the beginning. We both had careers. I worked corporate accounting. I had a lot of friends. I traveled. He's an engineer. He traveled. He had his work and job, and we had our friends, and we went out and we had fun. We went on vacation. It was fun. You know what I mean? It was fun. But then when the kids came along and I needed him, and there were big decisions to make. We had a sick child, and I was exhausted. I was exhausted, and we were pushed to our limit. And I think that's when you really see, are you in a partnership? And my version of partnership was completely different of his version of partnership. And what I wanted from him, what I needed. So I gave him what I needed. So that was even worse, because then I was giving and not getting back what he needed. And he really didn't need it. You know what I mean? He really didn't need that. So it's really about understanding. And I told him, when we were, in the process of separating, I wanted to be sure that I was able to say to him, I appreciate you for who you are. I really do, because that's important. I mean, he gave me those beautiful children. I was able to stay home with them, which was my dream come true. So we worked well as housemates, but I didn't know that I had a right to need. And that was my message from my childhood. It had nothing to do with my parents. Ultimately, I learned that. And then I took it on as my own. And I had to forgive myself for believing it. I had to forgive myself for believing that I was unworthy just because that man chose to walk out of my life. And my mother was never connected to me. My mother didn't know how to connect to me, right? That is not about me. But when you're a child, you don't know how to survive that. So it's not about, they didn't do anything wrong. They did the best that they could with what they had. As we all do, right? You're a parent. Mm-hmm. You do the best you can. And I always say, I'm like, people, if I'm doing something wrong, you gotta tell me. I'm like, if you're hurting, that's why we call family meetings. If you're hurting, if I could say something so inadvertently, like benign, that could affect my child in a way that I don't even know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a lot of times parents, I was always really careful of this, like saying, what's wrong with you? My mother said to me all the time, and I'd be like, oh, I don't know, something's wrong with me. But I remember that so clearly. Like that hit my little girl heart in a big way. Because I was like, oh my God, my mom thinks something's wrong with me. When I'm sure to her that was benign, but to me it was devastating. You know what I mean? So it's those kind of things that you have to really, no one can know that except for you. You have to go in and dig and be like, what's hurting me? And what do I bring here? And what hurt her, not emptying the dishwasher, whatever she's doing that's pissing you off. What's that touching in you? Because it's usually not about the nonsense that we're arguing about. It's really about something deeper, and for men to understand that they have a right to need, they have the power to lead in a place of love. That's also huge. I think men don't know how to handle emotion. The only thing they're comfortable with is anger. So it's apathy, anger, instead of, wow, I have an opportunity here to, if I can touch my own heart, you can touch a woman in a big way because you're in touch with yourself and you're going to lead from a place of love, even if you're leading out of the marriage because you're too, like I said, there's relationships that are abusive. That's not the situation that I'm talking about. The abusive relationships, there's still learning potential. They're still learning about, wow, look what I tolerate. Look what's okay with me. How can I shift me to call in something bigger and better? What is this showing me about me? Because if you can use the relationship, I mean, all relationships, they're like mirrors, they're like good, they're mirrors to show you what's going on here. So stop with the blame. Look at what is this showing me about me? It'll show you your strengths. It'll show you your weaknesses. It'll show you your potential. It'll show you where you're happy, where you're sad. It'll show you so much about you if you take the time to look. When you just focus on the other person, right, then they're responsible for your happiness. You're never going to find it because then you're looking outside of yourself to be happy. And that just doesn't work. It works temporarily.
Well, so Allyson, a lot of people who are watching this are probably thinking to themselves, well, Allison's really self-aware of her worthiness and what is or is not making her happy. But, what about just the regular old guy who's watching this who is unhappy and is not quite sure on why they're unhappy? Do you have any kind of anything you would say to them in terms of deciding, are they unhappy because of their marriage versus some other circumstance in their life? And how do you tell that it's really the marriage and what you're not getting from your marriage that's upsetting you versus being stressed out at work or something going on with your kids or something else? How do you know what it is that's upsetting you?
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's really like, that's a process. I mean, for me, like, I don't want people to think, oh, look at me, I'm so self-aware. It took like a long time to get here. For me, it was physical issues. I had severe migraines, heart issues. It was like I was in a storm of hell. I did not know. We tend to blame our circumstances. Everybody does. I'm miserable because of that, right? So the place that you start is you have to look inside and this is about self-love. This is about what's hurting you. Like, if no one else is listening, no one gave a shit what was going on in me. No one cared what was hurting me. Nobody did, right? And then my hurt started to manifest physically because I was drowning. And then the pain came. And I was like, because I can hide my emotional pain, but my physical pain, people, it manifested, I think, because I was like, I'm in so much pain. I don't even know what to do with it. And I don't even know why, So it wasn't until I started to look at really inside, what do you need? Like, start listening to yourself. It's everything. It's not just your marriage. It's not just, it's of course it's your job, it's your marriage, it's yourself. You could be unhappy about your weight, your career's not going the way you want, your friend. There's a lot of factors, right? Yeah. But again, if you start with, you have a lot of control about your internal state, exclusively from your circumstances. Your circumstances do not determine your internal state. That's what I want to talk about too. can I go into heart math now, or can I
Yeah,
tell you?
before we go into heart math, I just want to ask you one more question about your family for a second. You talked about things that you've taught your children based on, what you've recognized. What would be the most important lesson that you think any of us could teach our children to set them up to have a lifetime of happiness, or at least understanding whether or not they're in a situation where they are actually happy?
Perfect question. And that's actually the same answer as last one. It's so important to understand yourself, to stand in your power, to stand in your worthiness. A lot of times people think self-love is selfish love.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not. It's loving yourself so much that you're so full of love that you can't help but be compassionate and loving. That you matter, right? So it's not you're not going into any relationship like, I matter, so what I say goes. Absolutely not. It's, you know what, I matter here too, but I'm so full of love that I actually know that I have a place here, that my voice matters, but I want to hear your voice too. That's the compromise, right? And also, like, I teach my boys, like, it's so important to really, like, when you start to listen to yourself, you can listen to other people better. When you start to love yourself, you can start to love other people better. What do you hear me saying? Like, I said that a lot to them, like, when we're having a disconnect, what do you hear me saying? Because a lot of times in relationships, you're hearing from your own perspective, but if you stand in your power and your worthiness, you know that you're bringing love to the table. You're not bringing anger to the table, that you matter too. That's it. You matter too. And that's important, because then you can have a conversation. Because if you feel like you don't matter, you're going to get defensive and you're going to attack, right? That happens a lot. You're going to get angry. If you feel like you're unhappy, you're unheard, you're miserable, you're going to get angry. I see it in relationships all the time, right? And when I do coach married couples, there's always a disconnect between what one person is saying and what the other person is hearing. Mm-hmm. They hear something completely different. And the most important thing is that they know I am important too, and that my spouse cares about what I feel. We don't have to agree. Right? We can agree to disagree. We don't have to agree, but they care about what I feel. So that's the most important thing, is to to not lose yourself, to love yourself, and to figure out what you need. Like with the question that you asked before me, like, where do you start? Because you lose yourself. You don't even know why you're unhappy. You're just miserable. You're pissed off. You're angry. That's important. That's why I told you, like, I really like to concentrate on what's hurting you, because feeling like, what, I should be past this, I should be grateful, I should be over this, you're not addressing what's really hurting you. In order for me to do my journey, I had to go into what was hurting me. I had to. What is hurting me? What's hurting my heart? What do I need? And I know that's difficult for a lot of men. I know that is. But it's so essential to their own well-being. If you choose, and it's a choice that you make, if you choose to ignore it because it's easier, right? You shove your emotions. That is why heart disease is the #1 killer of men. That is why I think men don't feel safe or comfortable being vulnerable. It makes them feel weak. It's not weakness, it's power. You can lead with that. You have a right to show up. You have a right to take up space. Men are inside every big, strong, powerful, tough man. There's a sweet, adorable little boy that needs to be loved. It's okay to let people know you need to be nurtured, and you need to be loved, and you need to be heard. That is okay. That is okay. You could still be tough. You could still be strong. You could still be the man. You can still lead from a place of love. It's really important. But I think that's what my book is about, is self-love. I think that people feel, and I know for me, I really didn't feel like I had a right to take care of myself. I was responsible for everybody else, and I had to take care of everybody else. And I know a lot of people get caught up in this, and with men, they get caught up taking care of their family. They make sacrifices for their family. They feel like they're giving everything. They feel like, I'm going to work all day, working hard, supporting you financially, and but when they come home, I think that there's a disconnect about what they need. I think they need to be, so they have a right to need whatever they need, and there has to be a compromise there. And so they really feel like they're giving it their all, and they get confused about what's the problem? What's happening? I don't understand what the disconnect is, because we do have different needs. We do have different needs. The most important thing is that you are clear about what you need, so that you can express it in a way where there's a compromise, because men and women are always going to be different. That's what makes us great. It's what complements us. That's why, you know what I mean? Like that's, we need other people. We don't want the same person as us. We want people that complement us and help us grow in areas where we're, where we're weak. A marriage is a beautiful relationship. I mean, I want to be married again. I love the institute of marriage. I love the connection, the idea of it, the partnership. I love it. I really do.
Well, that's really good to hear. I mean, men, I think a lot of the problem with men is that they don't know what they want a lot of times, because
Yeah.
what you said earlier on, which is that it's really easy to get into like this routine.
Mm-hmm.
Get up, go to work, come home, watch TV, go to bed. And it gets, and becomes so monotonous. A lot of men just get stuck in that monotony.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not identifying that their wife is unhappy or has needs that are not being fulfilled. And then they're not clear on it too. Something else you said really, really struck me, which is, this mirroring, trying to ask other people, what did you hear me just say? I mean, I can see that. I see that in my own life, and I'm sure most people see it in their lives, not just your spouse, your kids, but friends, other family members, people at work.
Absolutely.
We all hear that tone that
Yeah.
isn't intended, but we hear it because we're in a certain mood, and we hear a tone, or you think someone's being sarcastic, and they absolutely did not mean to be sarcastic. I just think that is so important, that particularly these days where we're communicating so much, not actually physically in front of each other, but talking through computer screens, it's become so much more difficult to really see what someone's actually feeling. Because you can take cues, right, from somebody. If you see them around, for example, you're in an office and you see someone walking around the office all day looking like they're pissed off, and they come and say something to you, you can kind of understand maybe that maybe they're just pissed off. But anyway, I just thought that was wonderful. So when you and I spoke a couple days ago, I was so fascinated by this heart math stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about what heart math is and how it can really help with the issues that you've been talking about?
So Heart Math there's a Heart Math Institute in California, and they do research connecting. It's really about heart coherence, heart-brain coherence, right? Making sure that your heart and your brain are working coherently, and using elevated emotion to change your mood. That, like what I told you, your internal state can be independent of your circumstances. Right. And you do see that. You see people that are there's people that are really, really struggling with major issues, and they have this beautiful spirit and attitude because they are dictating their own internal state. Right. So like I said before, it is very important to absolutely honor what you are feeling. You are not to just I'm miserable, but I'm just going to be grateful. No. You have a right to honor your feelings. Your pain is real. Your pain's there to teach you. It's important. You need to honor it. But ultimately, heart math is getting your heart and your brain in a coherent pattern. If your heart is beating erratically, right, your brain's going to be like, oh my God, something's wrong. And then you're going to start having negative thoughts, and you're going to get anxious. And then the more anxious you get, your heart starts beating faster, and then you can't breathe. And you're like, oh my God, I can't. So it's like you get into the cycle that's a stress cycle. So this teaches you how to use your heart intelligence to break that stress cycle. You're using your breath, you're using elevated emotion. Okay. So and I know that it's very difficult to, if you are in a state of stress, to just be like, okay, sure, especially for men. That's why it's so cool, because there's actually, I told you, like, you hook it up to your ear, and it measures the variability, your heart rate variability, the timing changes between your heartbeats, which is a really good indication of your physical resilience, right, and your internal state. So you hook it up and you be like, okay, think about something that really aggravates you. And they can actually see their heart rhythm changes. Like, that changes. You have to understand that what you think is changing your physiology. And I know women can get that without proof. Men need proof.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm like, this is proof. So like, you can actually see that it changes your variability. And I'm like, okay, now in that space, it's okay to be aggravated. But in that space, okay, breathe. Let's use your breath. You are in control. This is your body. You are in control of it. I don't want you to drop dead of a heart attack. You don't deserve that. You deserve to live a beautiful, happy life. Okay. You don't need to be that stressed. So let's breathe. So first I teach breathing exercises, and then we use elevated emotion, right? So even in, like I said, one of the best perspective changes is that question. Instead of, why is this happening to me? Poor me, I'm a victim. What is this here to teach me? What can I learn from this? How can this make me better, right? Then even the roughest, I mean, I got to tell you, I'm not kidding you. The roughest, most horrific, most devastating things in my life have taught me the most, and they gave me the most love. They helped me grow the most. I am the most grateful for those moments. I did not learn in the times when everything was going smooth. Yes, it felt so much better, but I didn't learn about me, and I couldn't use I didn't waste a thing. I used every single pain I've ever had in my life to help people. Right? And that's beautiful. I couldn't be more grateful for my pain. Could not be more grateful for my pain. And I hated going through it. Hated it. Hated it. You can't hate your story. So you got to own your story. You got to embrace your story. When I hated it, it just made me physically ill. Physical issues always have an emotional component, and emotional pain always makes you physically ill, right? They're connected. So the heart math is taking a breath and using your breath. Number one, it's powerful. Number two, you don't have to think everything that pops into your head. You don't have to go with it. You don't have to.
Yeah.
You could say, hold on a minute. This does not serve me. Like there was times I literally had to do this like every half hour. I was like, today until 12 o'clock, I'm not hurting you. I am not hurting you. I am not going to bash your head in about what you didn't do, what you have to do, all that you can't do. No, I'm like, I was a complete perfectionist. I would do 50 million things that day. And if I forgot to do one thing, that made me shit for the day. And that's not true. It's just not true. And I would beat myself up, and I would lay awake at night and, no, I'm not hurting you today. So for every hour, I was like, nope, not hurting you today. No, you're fine. You're good. And start talking to yourself in a different way. That's the neuro-linguistic programming piece too. How you speak, your words matter. You listen to what you say. A lot of times for me, this is another good point going back to your question before. Listen to what's coming out of your mouth, right? I would be like, oh, that doesn't bother me. And then I'd be like, I was like, oh my God, look, it's coming out of my mouth again. It must be bothering me. I have to pay attention to it. If you're complaining, if you're miserable, like, oh, this is bothering me. I got to look at this. So the heart math is really using elevated emotion, and not, like I said, I'm just going to be, I have to just be happy? No, it's, I am here, and what can this do to help me, to lift me, to help me grow, to serve me? How can this serve me? How can I take control of my thoughts, my mind, my health? It empowers. Men love that. They love to be in a place of power, right? So when you are miserable and unhappy, you are powerless. But now it's like, wait a minute, I get to take control of me. That's beautiful, right? And that's how you're going to lead a family better. That's how you're going to lead a company better. That's how you're going to lead anything better. That's important for me. It's a very important piece. I have executives that come in there to just for that, because they want to lead their company better, because they can be in a state of love and peace. They can be a better leader. They can appreciate people more. They can understand people more. They can help shift other people's mindsets. Productivity at work. Why? Most of the time because people have personal problems that they bring into work.
Yeah.
So this helps everybody. So I've trained executives how to use this for their staff, because it's something that you can use in a meeting. You don't have to go in a room and meditate and do yoga on top of a hill. You can just sit there and go, all right, hold on. I know what it feels like to be stressed, right? We all know what it feels like to be stressed. Hey, how you doing? Oh my God, I'm stressed. This, that. You know what I mean? We all know that. That's our natural response. So this is purposeful practice of mindfulness to get into a state where I have control over what I'm feeling inside. I have control over what goes on in my head. See that thought that doesn't serve me, I don't have to go with it. I could be like, nope, out. No, I'm not thinking that right now. Right. And so and also finding a place that you can be at your best, like your happy place, that helps you with that piece of it is like when we're doing the breathing exercises, I'm like, where are you happy? Like for me, I love being on a beach, right? So in order to find out what your body feels like when it's at a state, in a state of coherence and balance, I bet you 99% of us don't even know what that feels like. That's why we can't recognize it, right?
Yeah.
So while you're doing the breathing exercise, it's in through your nose, out through your mouth, right? It double exhale. So however long you inhale, exhale, at least double, right? Calms your nervous system, calms your central nervous system. But put yourself in a place where you're peaceful, your happy place, so that you can start to understand what that feels like. So your body, that's not going to be, see, like my body, I had a very stressful childhood, right? So my body was stuck in high alert, DEFCON 5. I didn't know anything but stress. The tiger chased me my whole life. So for me, being calm gave me anxiety. Being panicked, I'm good. I'm in a state of stress, I'm good. I know what to do. Being calm, being peaceful, I had no idea what to do. But it started to affect my physical body in my 30s. I was having debilitating migraines. You couldn't get out of bed for days. It was ridiculous, right? So it's like you're going to start practicing. That's what the heart method is too. Practice what it feels like. So when you're in a business meeting and you're and the numbers aren't working, or there's a problem that came up and you're like, ooh, I feel my body getting into a state of stress. I can shift that, take a few breaths, get into a state of calm, because what happens is when you go into fight or flight, right? You go offline. Your cognitive thinking is affecting, your problem solving abilities is affected. You are literally in survival mode. You're not there to think. You're not there to problem solve. You are there to run, right? So that's when people overreact, right? That's when people react from a place of anger. That's when people shut down. Happens in relationships too. So it's business and relationships. But when you could say, oh, hold on, I recognize this state. I'm not going to do that. I can calm myself down and I can get into a state. And again, it doesn't have to be a state where like, woo, look at me, I'm so happy. But it's a state where I can think. I'm back online. I'm back in my prefrontal cortex. I'm not on my amygdala, freaking out and then running from the tiger. I'm calm. I'm peaceful. I'm in control. Everything's okay. I'm okay. Then you can handle your situation better. You can problem solve better. You can lead better. You can talk better. You can communicate better. It works in every area of life. It's just such a great thing. There's a lot of information on it. Like I said, it's Heart Math Institute. There's all kinds of studies. There's all kinds of information, but it's a really great stress management tool. And I love it for men because they get to see it. So I could prove it to you.
Well, I think that's wonderful, because I think a lot of men just get in the habit of trying to get away from stress. My wife's in a bad mood today, I'm just going to go to the basement. They just want to get away from it. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I wanted to go back to something you said a minute ago about learning lessons from what happens in your life. How often do you see that people learn a lesson, but it's the wrong lesson about what happened in their life? I see this a lot with men. They, instead of recognizing that there was something that they did in their marriage that caused the marriage not to work, or the marriage lasted longer than it should have because they didn't recognize their worthiness and their need to be happy, that the lesson they learn is, I need to not marry someone else like my wife. I need to find someone that's not like her. How often do you find that men just learn the wrong lessons? Because I find that I see that a lot with our clients.
Absolutely. And I can guarantee you, even that lesson, that's not a lesson that'll stick, because they're going to marry the exact same woman that's going to look different, but because ultimately they're going to look different, but they're going to make you feel the exact same way. So, you know what I mean? Like that, but that's true. That's why second marriage divorce rates are higher than first.
Yeah.
Right? If you don't do your work. So the lesson cannot be about out here. It's got to be here. I'm always like, go in. What did you learn about you? Not, I don't want to. So if the lesson has to do with somebody else, like, oh, I just can't marry that that one. I just got to marry somebody nicer than her. That's not a lesson. That's still you looking externally to be happy and to fix your circumstances. That's not a lesson. We don't give you credit for that one.
Well, it sounds like when you end a relationship, whether you're married or not, it sounds like you really should spend some time doing self-reflection before you enter into a new relationship, or you're just going to make the same mistakes again. The big problem with men, Allyson, is that not all men, but there's a large contingent of men who will not end a marriage until they've found somebody else.
Yeah.
And I see that quite frequently. And I think to myself, when I see that, you're just substituting one mistake for another one, because you're not identifying. You're trying to hide the pain, run away from the stress. So it really, everything you're saying today is something that all of the men that are watching this need to think about, the fact that whenever your marriage hasn't worked for whatever reason, you need to spend some time learning a little bit about yourself and what it is that you did or didn't do during your marriage that you need to work on. So, the theme of today's conversation was finding happiness after divorce. And I think people that have watched this hopefully are starting to understand that if you don't address all of these issues, it's impossible to be happy after divorce.
Yeah. But I also want to say, like, I really want to encourage people, because happiness, the best part about this is that happiness, like I said, first thing I said to you, happiness is an inside job. Yeah. So it's never impossible. It's always possible. Like, I want to give people hope. Like, you are phenomenal. You get to create your own happiness. Yay. Right. But stop looking outside of yourself. That's the most important lesson that I want people to take away with. Happiness is up to you, and you are amazing, and you are powerful, and you get to create it. Okay. So, but you have to make sure that you are bringing your best and highest self to every day. Like you said, like people that are jumping into different new relationships before they end the old ones, you haven't appreciated. You don't have to stay married to that person, but you do have to appreciate who they are. You did marry them. Okay. So you can dissolve that in a place of love and kindness. Otherwise, you jump into the next relationship only shows that you don't feel worthy in your first marriage. You're jumping into something else for her to tell you you're worthy. You haven't owned that for yourself. You own your worthiness. You're going to create a beautiful marriage. You're going to create a beautiful relationship. You're going to create beautiful, business relationships, but you have to recognize that you are powerful, and it's not external. It's not outside of yourself. And I think that is true. A lot of people do that, that they're so afraid. I mean, and believe me, everybody feels this way. I was terrified to be alone. I'm like, I'm in my mid-50s. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm embarking on this adventure, and I have to be alone, and that's scary. What what if I don't find anybody? All those negative things that enter your mind. So they're like kind of, hedging their bet, but they're not really focusing. It's more, I can't be alone, instead of I really want to create the relationship of my dreams. And so for me, I had to face my fear of being alone, right? Had to, and it was scary, in order for me to become the woman that I knew I wanted to be, to create a beautiful relationship. Right. So that's where I put my focus. And that's where I think everyone should put their focus. Be what you want. Be somebody, stop looking for someone to love you. Be the love. You be the love. You be someone lovable, right? So that somebody else couldn't help but love you, right? And then if both people are doing that, that's beautiful, because you're both bringing your best and highest self to the relationship, and then you can't fail because you're communicating. Communication is huge. But yeah, I think that, it's really important to understand that you really do create your own reality. So what you created in your marriage, it's not one person's fault. It's both people. And this isn't about blame. This is about recognition, acknowledgement, owning the piece of it that was yours, so that you can grow. It's beautiful. And then you really can have happiness, because you get to create it. You can be happy alone. You can be happy with somebody. You are in charge of your own happiness. And I think that a lot of men don't understand how powerful they are, and that they really can create a beautiful life.
Yeah. I think it's such an important message. I know when you and I were talking a few days ago, I had asked you, when men start to date after a divorce, where should they start? And you just were very quick to say, you just have to show up for yourself. Yeah. You have to show up, and you have to recognize that you've got to love yourself before anyone else can love you. And I just think that that's really just a core message, that if people don't take anything else away from today, that's really it. Because I think so many of us concentrate on everything that's wrong with us.
Yes. That is mainly the thing. Like that is really where I focus in my practice. I'm like, I want to show you what's great about you. And then you're going to take that and you're going to highlight that, because that's beautiful, because that is the focus. Everybody feels like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What do I need to fix? You're not broken. You don't need to fix anything. You need to grow. You need to show up. You need to find the best pieces of you. And a lot of times, like I said, men don't recognize the best pieces of them are their sensitive heart, their vulnerability, the things that they think they have to hide, their need. Sometimes you're allowed to need. You're allowed to need. And they think that they have to hide that. And I think women are nurturers. Women want you to share that with them, because they want to meet that need. So you have to be willing to be you. Really, that's it. Be you, and know how amazing you are. Know how powerful you are. Know how strong you are. Know that you can create the life of your dreams. Absolutely. And it doesn't have to, divorce is never ever fun, and it's devastating on many levels. Absolutely. I'm not going to take that away from anybody, myself included. There was a lot of growth and a lot of beautiful lessons, and you really can create something different. And sometimes you have to go through these experiences, especially when you get married really young. I mean, we were just 20 years old. What do we know? I couldn't imagine my daughter picking a lifetime partner at this point, you know what I mean, in her life. But you have to go through these lessons to teach you what you don't want, and to be really appreciative of who you are. That marriage, I am grateful for every day. It taught me who I was. It did. It taught me the strength that I had inside of me that I would have never been able to find had I not been in a relationship like that. And now I'm going to create something different from a higher place. So
yeah, I think that's a wonderful message. I tell everybody that that are going through a divorce, that divorce is not the end of your life. Yeah. It's just the end of the beginning of your life.
Yeah.
And I think if you look at it like that, you're always, you kind of look at your marriage almost like as an introduction to a book. And now you're going to start writing some new chapters. And I think if you just keep your eye on that, you can find happiness.
And I want to say one more thing to men too, because I know a lot of men feel like that they failed, and there's no failure, there's just not. And I know, like, my husband even said that to me. He's like, I feel like I failed. I'm like, you didn't fail at all. I'm like, we had different needs and wants, and we were all like, we did the best we could. We really did, but I'm like, you didn't fail at all. And I didn't fail. That no, there's no right or wrong unless somebody does something blatantly, I don't want to take away from the people that are actually do something blatantly wrong and hurtful. And, that's a whole different discussion. But even in those situations, like I said before, you can still learn something about yourself. You can learn about why you're there, what made you choose that type of relationship. There might be something in you that needs to heal. But there is no failure, and I don't want men to feel like there's failure here. You are allowed to feel sad. You are allowed to feel angry. If you were in a really bad relationship, or like where there was infidelity and stuff like that, you're allowed to express all those feelings, but you have to express them in order to change. You are not going to make that go away by jumping into another relationship. You have to get into a relationship with yourself. You have to honor and love yourself. And to me, that's the biggest lesson. And I think that's what a coach can do, that they really help guide you back to you, and then you're golden. It's good.
Yeah, I think we'll have to talk again, because I'm really interested in your thoughts on why people do cheat on their spouses. Because
I have lots to say about that.
Yeah, I know, and I think a lot of it's related to a lot of what we've been talking about today. So we'll have to pick that up on another day. I want to thank you so much for being here. If anyone would like to work with you, how would they contact you?
You can get in touch with me. Contact me through my website, foundationscoach.com. Or you can email me at Allyson@foundationscoach.com, or you can call me 973-396-2408.
All right, wonderful. We'll put all of those in the comments below. Well, thank you so much for being here, Allyson. I learned so much today. I was mesmerized by so much of what you were saying today, because it's just, you have so much information inside and so many great tips for people. That and the problem, I think, with a lot of what you said today is that a lot of it, for a lot of men, it's going to feel so overwhelming they won't do any of it. So that's all the more reason you need somebody to help you step by step learn how to do it, because that's what happens. If we're overwhelmed, we just don't do it, right? We just don't do it.
Exactly. It's so true. That's why every man needs a life coach.
I agree completely. Well, thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure having you, and we'll see everyone else soon.